So if anybody on here is doing direct to seller and you're struggling with lead flow, which most of the people across the country are, I spend lots of time and money being around people that are doing this at the highest level. Everybody's experiencing this across the board. I would encourage you to not overqualify the people as they come in and really make an attempt to get out there, talk to the sellers, get out to the property, go on the appointment, and shoot your shot when you get out there.
Alrighty, folks, as I have mentioned probably 100 times over the last 6 or 7 years, Jason Pritchard is an investor that I put on my personal Mount Rushmore, which means he's a top four investor. I put him on there with folks like Sam Zell. I put him on there with the guy from Blackstone, Jonathan Gray. So again, he is the best of the best. We're going to talk about some of the things he has done. We're going to allow you to ask questions. Again, these Sunday sessions inside school are for you. I generally start off with a couple of topics because some of you are shy and you want to get the party started. So same story as always. Raise your hand or put a question in the comments, and you too can get advice or questions from Jason. Jason, man, how you doing? Thank you for being here.
I am doing great, Zuber. It's good to see you again. It's good to be here with everybody on school. Appreciate you guys taking your Sunday morning and spending some time with us.
Yeah, why don't we first start off with something that I told you pre-roll, but I wanted to talk about this. A lot of investors get excited in real estate investing. It's a path to building wealth, it's a path to building income. However, I've seen people come in and they chase shiny objects. Now, what does this mean in the context of Jason Pritchard? Well, you and I have been boys for a long time, right? You
Yeah.
start out wholesaling, start out flipping, start building just long-term rentals. Then you do Airbnb. Then you go out. Actually, I think then you go out of state. Then you go Airbnb. Now you're doing land development. I mean, Jason, you're all over the board. What the hell? What are you doing?
I think it's the natural progression that a lot of us get on as disciplined and structured as I am, and that's a muscle that I built over a long time that served me very well. I think it's just very easy to get caught up in kind of the next big thing. That shiny object syndrome is pretty prevalent in our business. And I think there's good and bad things. And the good thing, and we'll get into it a little bit, is this land development stuff. I'm very, very bullish on that. We were chatting a little bit about how, we're consolidating some of our efforts and really focusing on that moving forward. But, you have to go through some of these other things to realize that you have to keep the main thing, especially in the market that we're at right now, because if you get too distracted, sometimes it can work and it can pay off. And then other times, I think most of the time you're going to find that it pulls you in other directions and you lose focus, man. So, I know we can talk about that some more.
Yeah, I'm going to break that down a little because again, this is where I see a lot of new investors, right? Well, let's first tell your story, right? Again, I tell the story like you're, chasing rabbits and squirrels, and that's not
Yeah.
really fair. I did it on purpose, right? You did a lot of wholesaling, then flipping, right? You learned that skill. You made the main thing, and then you added these other things. And then the other thing that you've done, and I've seen you do it, is you stick your toe in the water, out of state investing first, then Airbnbs. You try it, you dabble, you see if it's going to be the next main thing, and then not. You pull out. You're like, nope, that didn't work. Going
That's a
backwards.
really good point. And what I will say is one of my strong suits is when I know that it's time to move on, I am not afraid to pull the plug on something and just, we either chalk it up as a loss and a learning experience, or we book whatever win that we can from this, move on, and then we get back to business, dude. So I feel like uh progression and growth is about trying new things, man. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't want this to be painted with the brush that, like, guys, we have to, like, all just stay in the same lane for the rest of our lives and never grow, because I don't think that that's the right answer too, because I'm big on progression, evolution, and growing. And you're never going to figure out what the next big thing could be for you if you don't take a chance on something. But I also know when it's time to move on. And we were talking about some of the changes. I'm not going to talk about it, like, go in depth now, but like some of these big changes that we've had with things that I've been doing for a really long time, when it's time to, you know, look at something new, I'm not afraid to pivot and transition. And I've had to do it multiple times in my business. Like when I was an agent and we grew the team, and we've talked about that too. At one point we had 7 agents working for me. I thought that our business model was going to be growing a team at a brokerage. I spent 4 years building out a team and doing all of that stuff. And, we had to pivot away and come back to our basics with investing. And I've gone through that evolution multiple times. And so The advice that I would give you guys is if you are going to do something, be focused, be committed, go in and give it a try. But if you feel it pulling yourself away and it doesn't feel like it's in alignment with like the long-term future and goals, you can't just hang on to it because, you've made an investment in, like with me, with out of state stuff. I sold all of my out of state stuff last year, like all of it, we've sold it. So it's just, you got to figure out when it's time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with Airbnb, right? You were building a decent Airbnb business. You had a couple of winners and one dog, and you're like, dude, it's distracting. It's different than everything else we're doing, and it's just not worth the return. You sold all those, or I don't know if you sold them, but you pivoted those to other things as well, correct?
Yeah, we sold one. We turned one back into a long-term rental because we've got lots of those, infrastructure to do that, the team to do that, and we're waiting for one midterm tenant to move out. We got a big insurance claim payout on one, and then when that one's done, we're going to sell that one. So it's
Yeah.
again, that's a perfect example of a business overall that was profitable for us, but it wasn't scalable. And I think you've got to look at a couple different things because I've gotten into some of these kind of shiny objects where they were complete losers. And those sometimes, guys, those are the easier ones to pull the
Yeah.
plug on because it's like, shit, if I'm losing money, like there's no point in me being here. So that one's easy. But the Airbnb thing, that's an example of, hey, like this, that wasn't as easy to do because that was profitable. It was throwing cash flow off. We had a team in place. I wasn't like fielding inquiries from guests and like booking things. Like my team had done all of that, but I just knew that this wasn't something that I wanted to invest like my life's work in and grow and scale. I didn't want to have hundreds of Airbnbs and have that be my business model. And that's the thing that I'm learning. Like, you know, if you're going to go and pick something, like, can this be the thing for the next 10 years? And when you view it through that lens, I think a lot of times it's going to make you think differently about this, and I got into Airbnb. This was before COVID. So it was before it was starting to become trendy, but it wasn't as like popular as it was like post COVID with everybody that was doing it. And I just didn't feel like this was aligned with me, like something that I wanted to do for 10 plus years, And so
Yeah.
those type of things can be harder to pull the plug on.
Yeah, folks, if you are listening to this or watching this on a replay, I am aware that my sound is not perfect. My microphone took a crap this morning, so I'm doing this off the computer mic. I will fix that later this afternoon. It is what it is. We had to talk to Jason, and I wasn't going to let a mic issue get in the way of that. So I know what's going on, but hey, we're going to move forward anyway. The next thing, Jason, I want to talk about that I think you could really help the average investors on are off-market deals, but more specifically, instead of the marketing and the mailers and all of that, the infrastructure we've talked about, I want to go back down to getting belly to belly and talking to sellers, right?
Yep.
That is, door knocking and talking to a human being. I think that is something that a lot of people look at going, that scares the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about that skill and all of that?
Off market to me, guys, is it's the thing that really unlocks deal flow and volume because when we are only, especially now in a real estate market where the transactions have compressed and just the amount of deals that are happening across the board, on market, off market, it's been whacked down by a significant percentage. Here's what's working right now for us off market. And I'd love to answer questions because my team and I, all we do is eat, breathe, and sleep these type of things every single day. So like we are in the thick of this every day, tweaking everything, checking everything. Like we pay very, very, very close attention to this part of our business. Um, the thing that's working right now, everything that we do, mail, cold calling, SMS, SEO, PPC, response rates this year, and specifically this last quarter, we're almost done with Q2 this year. It's down. It's down by about 30%. So just to give you guys a frame of reference, I spend between $50 and $55,000 a month just on marketing. Most of that is direct mail. And our direct mail response rate is like less than 1%. It's about half of a percent right now. And the industry standard for a very long time was 1%. We're not getting great response rates from a lot of our other stuff. And you can attribute that to a lot of different things that are going on that are outside of our control. So I always focus on right now, this is what my team and I really, really are looking at is what happens after the phone rings, after the seller comes in and we actually field that call. When that lead comes in, we can control so much more after that. And you have to answer that phone call live. You have to be on your A game when that seller calls. And what we're doing is we took we called it a four pillars approach to qualifying a seller. Like typically our first point of contact, guys, is trying to determine whether this seller makes sense for our business model, because every person that inquires and responds isn't going to be the right fit for a cash offer from an investor. And we would take a four pillars approach, meaning we want to know about the condition, we want to know about the motivation and why the seller wants to sell, we want to know the time frame that they want to sell, and we want to know the price. And we typically want three out of those four things minimum before we move it down the assembly line and underwrite the deal, then go on an appointment, because we didn't want to go out and spend time with tire kickers and people that wanted retail and so on and so forth. Now we are qualifying for motivation, and that's it. So, do you want to sell? Are you raising your hand and you want to sell? Jason and his team want to work with you one way or another. And so we are really, really pushing on getting out and going on appointments more, and really leaning into the fact that when we get our very best people out in the living room with the seller, shaking their hand, talking to them, really uncovering the motivation behind why they want to sell, we're seeing our conversion rates go way up there. So if anybody on here is doing direct to seller and you're struggling with lead flow, which most of the people across the country are, I spend lots of time and money being around people that are doing this at the highest level. Everybody's experiencing this across the board. I would encourage you to not overqualify the people as they come in, and really make an attempt to get out there, talk to the sellers, get out to the property, go on the appointment, and shoot your shot when you get out there. So that's what's working for us, number one. Number two, you have to just be relentless with your follow-up. I see this with a lot of really new investors is, they talk to the seller once, they make an offer, seller is not ready to go. They ask one or two more times, and then they move on to the next new opportunity that's in the system. And then 3-6 months later, they look and they see that Jason's team bought the deal for the same price that they would have been willing to pay, or even a number that's lower. And we had a big discussion with my team about this last week. Most of the deals that we are going to do are the ones that we've already gone out on the appointment and talked with the seller. Those are the sellers that are most likely to convert. And so I think a lot of us miss opportunities when we are constantly in the cycle of chasing that next new lead. So, there's lots of different ways that we can, lots of different directions we can take this conversation, but those are the things that are really working right now, really focusing on controlling everything that you can control after the lead comes in, and being relentless with the amount of follow-up that you're doing.
Well, I want to hit follow up one more time because again, I keep preaching, I keep talking about on the daily financial news and different millionaire conversations. I have never to date gotten one of my disrespectful offers accepted the first time.
Yeah.
It's always on the, third, fourth, fifth, sometimes ninth. So what's the average time, connections per contract? What are some of the longest ones? Sometimes the best deals you ever do are somebody you talked to a year ago. Just give
Yeah,
some
it is.
examples to encourage follow-up.
I would just say what we're seeing is we need to have usually somewhere between 8 to 12 touches before the lead converts. So after that lead comes in, there is usually somewhere around that 8 to 12 number. So a touch can be anything. It can be us calling, us texting, having a conversation, some type of interaction where we're actually reaching out to try to engage the seller. And we track all of this stuff really, really closely, guys. And so I would really, really encourage you to say, like, hey, if we talk to the seller, they express some interest, but they've ghosted me the last 2 or 3 times, you just need to be continuous with that follow up and stay on top of them. And this applies to agents too. So even if you guys aren't doing like direct to seller and you guys are going on market and you're talking to agents, lots of times, real estate people inherently sometimes are just lazy, guys. And it's a lot of times it's the squeaky wheel. It's you being that one that is kind of bordering like, man, am I being a little pest? Like, am I pesting, or by being a pest, am I pushing a little bit too hard? If you're new and you've never done this before, it is going to feel like you're pushing too hard. And that's just naturally what it is. You just have to kind of get over that and realize that it's the people that really, really have that persistence and that stick to itiveness is the ones that usually are going to find success. And you got to apply that towards any type of deal that you're doing, whether you're going through an agent or a broker, or you're working with the seller directly.
No, I love that. It's really funny you talk about off-market opportunities because Thatch Nguyen was with the school community on Friday, and he's obviously a great story going from a homeless shelter to a $100
I
million
love
dollar net.
Thatch. I
Yeah,
love him.
Thatch is
Yep.
amazing.
Yep.
But he's also talking about off-market and communication. So what can you talk about? What I don't want to talk about Jason Pritchard, the big team, but
Sure.
if you were just to be a solo person, think about Jason having a job but wanting to do this. What would be the one, two, three tools that you would invest in? Because there's lots of tools out there that are either too big or not needed. But if you were going to get a tool or two as an individual, what would those be?
So there's a couple. I usually break this up into two different buckets. Okay. So if you're new, you're like solopreneur and you're just wearing every single hat in your business, there are ways to source off-market deals that require a lot of your time and less money. And then there's ways that you can source off market deals that are going to require a little bit more money and less time. So I think you need to become self-aware first and decide like which bucket am I actually going to go in? Am I in a position where I have some additional income, some revenue, either from my W-2 or savings or whatever, where I can invest into a little bit of a higher quality marketing channel and generate inbound leads? So the people that fall into this bucket, what I would suggest doing is thinking through taking some of that cash, budgeting it out over a minimum of a 6 month period, and investing into leads that are going to be inbound. Inbound meaning that the seller actually takes the time to reach out to us. So the number one, two, three inbound channels for us are direct mail, SEO, and pay per click. And pay per lead too is probably the fourth, pay per click and pay per lead. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick breakdown of those things. I love mail. Mail has been tried and true. Mail is the staple. Mail is one of the lower maintenance type of inbound marketing channels. You find your list, you export it, you upload it to a mail provider, and then leads will come in. Okay. SEO is something that's going to take some time. So if you are planning on building this business out for the long haul, you can go to Carrot or GoDaddy or something and just get a simple landing page. And that's going to take time. I have the number one ranking home buyer page in Fresno County for all of the major keywords. So when somebody goes and searches sell my house fast in Fresno or sell my house for cash in Fresno, my page is right up there with maybe one or two other people. But I built my page out 7 years ago and we've been spending tons of money investing into that, right? And so that's something that's a little bit more long game. The way that you can get higher quality internet leads right now is either instead of doing direct mail, you can hire a pay per click company to go out and manage your boards, or you can just buy individual leads as they come in. All of those things work really well. And the benefit, again, of this, guys, is those leads have higher motivation and shorter conversion cycle from the day that you talk to them to the day that they sign a contract. On average, inbound leads are going to take 60 to 90 days from conversation number one to the day that they sign, right? So if you are like new, you have some money and you want to do a deal within 90 days, I think you've got to invest in one of those inbound marketing channels, okay? And here's the trick I think that you need to commit to. When you have your budget set aside, you need to think about it in 6 month chunks, right? So don't just say, I'm going to throw $5,000 at this marketing initiative if you can't stick with that for at least 6 months. So if you don't have $30,000 in the bank, right, then your budget is not $5,000. So you need to think about how much money am I willing to invest. Let's just say for the sake of round numbers, it's 12 grand and you're putting $2,000 a month. So then that way we've got to build a marketing channel that can fit within those monthly parameters. And if anybody in here wants to get in the weeds, I'd be happy to give you my thoughts on that. This is like a longer discussion than here on school, but if anybody in here is in this boat that we're talking about right now, where it's like, hey, I really want to give this a go. I've got a little cash. I've got this much money. I'm willing to deploy it over a 6 month period. Shoot me a DM in school or reach out to me on Instagram, and I will spend a little bit of time on how I think you should spend that. Because $2,000 a month is a lot different than $10,000 a month, and so we can, and I don't want you throwing your money away at some shiny object that doesn't make sense, right? So,
Yeah, let me
bucket
ask you a
number
question.
one,
So
yeah.
let me ask you a question on bucket number one, because this is where I think a lot of my followers are. Like, a lot of my followers are kind of me, right? You have a day job, you have a little bit of money.
Yep.
And the thing that I have seen work is, either PropStream or Property Radar. I think Property Radar today is a little bit more geared to me, right?
Yeah.
My
Same.
avatar,
Yep.
because it gives you all the search capability, but also allows you to do the mailers or the postcards right out of the platform,
Yep.
right? So if you're following my strategy of a buy box, you could set that up and you could just set it up in a routine way. You could even have multiple, right? Here's the one for, a real example. So there was a property, there was a community, this one that Brad's company was running. The condos were going to shit 93710 area about 5 or 6 years ago. You couldn't even get a loan on them, right? They were that bad, right? Gang
Yep.
infested and all that stuff. So I did a mailer at the time with PropStream because Property Radar wasn't there yet, and did a multiple mailers, ended up getting a deal closed there. But it's that kind of repetitive nature because again, I have a day job. I'm traveling all over the world. I could
Yep.
just set it up and the system will just run every 48
Yep.
hours or whatever. That's that's like and again, you can control the budget, right? $500 a month or whatever it is. That's kind of like the number one tool that I see today. But I don't know if you
Mail is
agree.
100% the number one marketing channel across the board. And there's lots of reasons why I like direct mail. It's something that is not as easily disrupted as like SMS marketing or cold, like text message marketing was really hot a few years ago.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
because of all of the TCPA compliance and 10 DLC and a lot of these different things, it's like it's not working the same way that it used to. The demographic of the sellers that we are
yeah,
usually buying properties from are still going to their mailbox. They're still, oh, it's just like they still go get the newspaper off of their driveway every single morning. And
yeah.
it kind of is what it is, you know? And so it's
Good
one of
point.
those things that just works. And, I use a CRM program called Resimply. I know the CEO of Resimply. He's one of the top CRMs for investors like me that do a lot of this across the board, across the country. Mail is number one. So if you guys are going to pick something, I think mail is kind of one of those tent pole staple marketing channels that you then build around, right? So the very
Yeah,
first paid marketing channel for me would be mail. It is like you said, it's very low maintenance as far as setting it up and getting it to go out regularly, right? Like I use Property Radar as well for a lot of our data sets along with some other companies. And then I use a company called Yellow Letter HQ and I just upload my list. I like Yellow Letter HQ because you have more flexibility with the mail piece, and we get really granular with split testing, postcards versus check letters versus like, all of these different custom pieces. And you can just upload your list and every month it'll just automatically send it off for you. So I think
yeah,
mail is a huge piece. And so yeah, if you're in that uh like W2, you have a few bucks, you have a buy box, you can go right into Radar. Here's my zip code. I want this age home, this size to this size, this length of ownership. I mean, we can get really, really granular. One of these days, honestly, what we should do is like list building on Radar. I can go in and give you like some really cool niche lists that work really well for smaller budgets. The downside to mail, guys, is it costs a lot. Yeah, it just that's what it is. It's expensive and you're going to be 75 80 cents a piece for like some of the pieces that really convert the best, like the check letters.
mhm,
And that means for every 10,000 records that you're going to send out, it's going to cost you, 7,500 bucks. And you need to be, and if you want to do a couple deals a month, you have to be around that 10,000 record mark. And so it doesn't mean that you can't convert these smaller niche lists like 500 or 1,000, but your phone is not going to blow up when you're sending smaller pieces like that,
yeah.
smaller chunks of mail.
Well, folks, let me know in the comments if you're watching this on replay, you want Jason and I to set up that session. I'd love to have him do it. But hey, if you guys don't need it, we won't do it. So let us know in the
Yep.
comments below. We'll set that up for another time. Let's do the other list. You have time, but not a lot of money.
Yeah, so this bucket, there are a handful of things that are still working really well. Somebody asked this in the comments too. I think it was Kevin. Would you ever have your team go door knocking to make connections? So the second bucket is people that have time but not a lot of money. And so the things that work really well for something like this are door knocking, cold calling, driving for dollars, and things where you're actually going out and engaging the seller. But these are the first bucket, we're generating inbound leads, higher quality, higher motivation. This other bucket, we're typically reaching out to the seller. So this is more outbound, meaning we're calling the seller to see if they're interested. They have not expressed any level of motivation to us. We're just literally reaching out to engage them. And the problem with those leads is they take a longer time to convert. Outbound leads in our industry are a 6 to 9 month conversion cycle, where what we said inbound is 60 to 90 days, right? So if you're going to be in this second category, guys, okay, it's very important to understand that on average, you're looking at 6 to 9 months sometimes before that deal comes in. Now, does that mean that you can't get lucky? Does that mean that you can't call the person at the right time and get a deal in your first few months? No, I'm not saying that. But if you're going down this road, you need to just know and understand that you may work for 6 months before you get anybody to sign a contract. And that's just the way that it is. And the goal would be to get the revenue from this first deal that you do, redeploy as much of you can of that money as you can into paid marketing to get to your next deal in a little bit shorter of a time frame. Okay. So here's that kind of the hack that works really well, where you can get in front of highly motivated sellers without having to spend a bunch of money. In Property Radar, what we do is they have in their investor that, like, they have these quick data sets that you can pull. So when you go to list building, you can click on this thing called investor lists, and they've got these preset filters for all of the really hot lists that investors like to do. And one of them is the new notice of trustee sales. So these are new sellers in your market that have a notice of trustee sale. So when you're dealing with foreclosures, I'm just going to use California as an example. This can vary based on the state that you're at. But in California, typically there's two different stages, guys, that you have, right? There's a notice of default, and then there's a notice of trustee sale. The notice of default is usually when you've missed 3 months worth of payments. So for 90 days, if you have not made a payment for 90 days, the mortgage company files the very first public record that shows that there's a problem with 1234 Main Street. The owner is having some issues keeping up with that, right? So that's usually the very first signal that we get that this seller may be, in the, in danger of losing the property that they're in, right? And so after another 3 months, 6 months total, if you haven't made any payments, they're going to send what's called a notice of trustee sale. So they'll basically say, hey, Jason, you haven't made a payment in 6 months. We've called, we've sent you letters, we've offered you loan modifications and these different things. We just haven't been able to come up with anything. If you don't do something in the next 30 to 45 days, your house is going to be sold at auction on this day, at this time, on this address. And it says all of that on the notice of trustee sale. So every week we go into Property Radar for the counties that we are doing this in, and we will pull all of the fresh notice of trustee sales over the last 7 days for Fresno County, Tulare County, Kings County. And we would have somebody go and just door knock them. And there isn't a ton of these, guys. Like in Fresno County, some weeks there's none. Other weeks there's 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? The list will build over time. So it's not like you're going to have 100 houses to go door knock. But if you do this, okay, it does a couple different things. The people with the notice of trustee sale, the notice of trustee sale, those sellers inherently, the ones going through the foreclosure process, they're big procrastinators, and it's a big reason why they're in the situation that they're in. So a lot of times, if you go talk to them when that first notice of default pops up, they're not really motivated because they know I got 3, 4 months before I've got to really do anything. So I'm just going to bury my head in the sand, and I'm going to try to do a loan. I'll look into bankrupt. Maybe my rich uncle will give me the money. You know what I mean? They're going to wait and just kick the can down the road. But once the notice of trustee sale happens, I mean, we can go knock on their door, and literally we'll have the Property Radar app open on our phone, and we'll just turn it around and show it to the seller and be like, hey, Mr. Zuber, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, but we just saw that your house here on 123 Main Street, it's getting sold at Fresno County Courthouse in 3.5 weeks. And this is the amount that it's selling for right here. This number right here is what they're going to start the auction for. I know that your goal is to stay in the house, right? And we can talk to you about the different options that are there, but we want to be the safety net for you, just in case plan A or B don't work out. The last thing that we want to see happen is the bank sell the house, you walk away with none of your equity, and you're left with nothing but a foreclosure on your record, right? And we just want to be there to prevent that from happening. So typically, guys, the best way to position yourself is not knock on the door like, hey, let me buy your house. It is, we want to be the safety net. That's what we want to be. And I know we have a really good recorded training, and I've got a door knocking script that I can share with you guys. Maybe I'll send that to you, Zuber, so you have it, and then you can post it in school or attach it to this thing. But we've got a script that we've built out that works really well, because it can be nerve wracking, dude. Like, you knock on that door and the door opens. It can be it's the type of scenario that builds like rhinoceros skin or alligator skin is what we call it. Like, that's a not an easy discussion to have and to do that every single day. But the benefit, guys, is you're talking to people that have to make a decision. There is no other. In 30 or 45 days, they're going to have to sell this house to somebody, right? It's either the bank is going to sell it or they're going to make a decision. And so a lot of the people in our coaching community and other investors that I know that are just starting, that don't have robust marketing budgets, I know people that buy 50, 60 houses a year just from door knocking right here in Fresno County. I know a bunch of them. And that's their only business model. They don't spend any money on mail. They just pull this list. All they do is go door knock, or them and their teams go door knock, and that's their entire business. So that's probably like one of the, the hacks or the secrets to get in front of really motivated people for not that much money, is just pull that notice of trustee sale list from Radar and just
Yeah.
start door knocking it.
I got a couple of things to kind of highlight there. First and foremost, Jason, inside school, as you know, but just for the recording, you actually have a class or yeah, I guess I'll call it a classroom
Yep, I've seen it.
underneath the
Yep, on the
classroom. So
classrooms. Yep.
yeah, so anything you send me, these pre-recordings, these scripts, I will simply add to that. So
Yep.
you've given us so much already. We'll just keep adding that
We've done a
there.
pretty in-depth, like, here's how you pull the list. Here's like the best practices when you're out there and you're saying it. Here's the script. Here's how to position your offer. Here's the follow-up protocol. I know I've done that in one of my trainings. I'll find it and I'll send it to you with the
Yeah.
resources. Then you
And
can
then
post
we
it.
will add it there. More value,
Yep.
folks. Again, remember, if you are in school, I think you got to get to level 2, which is really easy to do. Unlock all of Jason's value, just because I want people to be active. So it will be added there in the next 48 hours or so. Next up, Property Radar, again, is a tool I have a relationship with. I'll put a link below so people can go check it out. They give you, I don't know, a week free or something because of the link.
Radar
Um,
is great. Like that, guys. If you're want to take direct to seller serious, you have to have a data provider. There is no other alternative. You need something to pull the information, pull the owner's records, pull the numbers, pull your data sets. I've used Radar literally since 2014 when I started. I have had a
yeah,
subscription that I've used. It's just, I think it's one of the best companies out there. They're very reasonable. They're nationwide now. I mean, I think
yeah.
they have I know the owner pretty well, and the team over there, and they've done some really cool stuff with their software program. It's really good.
Yeah, and it just fits my world, right? It gives me the ability to create my buy box. It allows me
Yep.
just to automatically send mailers. I don't have to go to Yellow Letter or all these other things if I just want set it and forget it. So it works for me. The last thing I want to talk about is, NODs, notice of default trustee sales. It's been really low for a long time. I have a very sneaky suspicion that in the next 12 months, we're going to see 3, 4, 500% growth in these numbers. Now, again, we're going to
Okay.
go from 3 to 15. We're going to go from 10 to 30, right? There's been some shenanigans going on since COVID, specifically with FHA and some VA lending about extend and pretend. That's nonsense stops in September, which means inventory for us starts showing up January, February, March. Again, it will take a long time. It will be slow. It will not be a avalanche, but we are going to see these numbers go up. Why is that important? Folks, practice now. Practice now. And figure out what works, get it dialed in.
Let me give
So
you some context, and this is just what we're seeing boots on the ground.
yep,
I am the board chair for a local nonprofit here in Fresno County called Building Better Communities. And we have been buying real estate and doing affordable housing through that nonprofit since 2017, I think. So I've got lots of
wow,
experience in that space. And our nonprofit has early access to a lot of bank owned REO HUD houses. There's all these special programs, right? That allow us to buy properties. Here's what we've seen, to speak to what you're saying. For the last few years, right? Like up until 2020, we would buy, 3, 5. maybe a little bit more properties through this every month. It was just something that, that we did, right? And then for the last couple of years, there's been nothing. There's no inventory coming through. There is no alerts on any properties. It's just been dry. The last 6 months, we're getting 1 to 3 properties every
Mm.
single week, which has been a huge increase for us. And yesterday was the first day that we bought. Like yesterday, I actually went out to a property that was bank owned. And the way that it works for us is we have this portal that we log into. We get an email that says, hey, your organization has early access to 123 Main Street. We say, yes, we're interested. And then we will request an offer. And the bank will literally send us, here's what we want. Otherwise, we're going to go sell it at auction, right? And for years, the pricing for what made sense versus what the bank wanted, the variance was just crazy. The numbers didn't work. And yesterday was one of the first times in a year that we bought a property through there yesterday because the number actually came in at a price. And so, to your point, we've seen an increase in the amount of opportunities that have come through. And I've also noticed because we request pricing on everything, we've seen the pricing and the bank expectations starting to come back down to reality. And so I do agree with you. I think that there is going to be lots of opportunities with this, which makes the door knocking and learning about notice of trustee sales. You don't have to have a nonprofit or work with a nonprofit or whatever to have access to these guys. The best way is to work with the seller before it comes back into the bank's like holdings. You know what I'm saying? You're better off trying to work with the seller. And so if the number of REO properties increases, that just means that the sellers that are experiencing problems are also going to be increasing. So if you can build this skill set and add this tool to your toolbox, guys, because there's lots of nuances that you have to be used to here. Because lots of times you're waiting and working with sellers that 2 days before the auction, they're like, "All right, Jason, yeah, we've been following up for 6 months. Now I'm ready, but the auction it's Sunday the 20 it's Sunday the 29th, and the auction is on Wednesday." Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to know and understand, okay, we've got to get this in escrow. We've got to contact the trustee. We've got to request a postponement from the trustee. We've got to do all of these different things that are not the same kind of scenario as you're dealing with just like somebody selling a rental with a tenant that's not there. So I really encourage you guys to watch that training that I'll send over to Zuber because we get into some of that stuff that's a little bit in the weeds. And then if you find yourself in a scenario, which would be the best problem to have, like, hey, I went and knocked on a door and the seller's there, reach out to me and I can walk you through what you need to do because all the information to contact the trustee is in the property radar. We buy properties like this all the time, so I can kind of navigate you through that process because it's a little bit more tricky than just a regular sale.
Oh, Jason, you add so much value. Thank you, man. We got a question from the group. Again, folks, don't forget you can raise your hand, put comments. I'm looking through these to get you some questions. We've answered a couple already, but here's one. Jason, I really consider your team today to be an equivalent to SEAL Team 6, right? You've got the best of the best. You've mentored these people. They've started, from nothing, and they are the best of the best in California, in my opinion. But how'd you do it?
A lot of time and patience and effort, guys. I mean, I wish there was some kind of like secret or
Magic.
shortcut, but like, yeah, I mean, there just isn't. So I'm going to give you a couple different things in regards to team building. Like, I spent a lot of time developing, especially the people that are on my leadership team now. I mean, some of these relationships, I think you've had Scott on your thing
Mhm.
before. I mean, Scott was an intern with me that started 8 years ago. You know what I mean? And so now, you're talking about 8 years of training and development and working with somebody side by side and pouring into them and really kind of growing them. So some of this stuff is going to be like long game. The things that you can do now is I made some mistakes early on because a lot of us, I think we can just use that grind muscle and just through sheer hustle at the beginning we can find success, if that makes sense to everybody. And that's how I was just really gritty. I've always worked really hard, and I was just like, give me more work and let me just take on more stuff, and you can kind of will your way there at the beginning. Eventually you're just going to run out of bandwidth and you're not going to have the capacity to do everything. And so if I could look back again when it comes to team building, here's kind of how I would have done things a little bit differently. I would have, first of all, like identified the strength and what I'm really good at. So for me, that was sales and acquisitions. Okay. So I first hire I'm going to make is get the kind of the administrative, the operational, the financial tasks, like the things that are $20 an hour work that I can hire a VA or bring a personal assistant in. I want to get that off my plate so I can just crush at acquisitions, right? And I actually did that. I hired first a virtual assistant, then I brought a personal assistant to help me with operations and like the construction management and project management. And then I focused on acquisitions. One of the mistakes that I made was I stayed in that acquisition seat for probably 3 or 4 years longer than I should have.
Mm,
And that really stunted my growth. And so if you're not the acquisitions person, you're going to need to bring one of those people on and you can be more of the operator or the integrator. But eventually you're going to need to bring somebody in that replaces the thing that you're good at. And it's usually in that order. It's like, let me get the stuff that I don't like doing off of my plate first and focus in kind of my zone of genius. And then you'll see another kind of growth spurt because now you're not spread across multiple different things. It's all my energy is focused on the thing that I'm really good at. So you unlock another level there. And then eventually you're going to have to step out of that and more into a business owner role, which I'm assuming that's what a lot of us want to do. I don't know that we all want to be in the business in the day to day. Some of us maybe, and you can make a really good living and do that. But I wanted to build out more of a team and a business where I wasn't the bottleneck on a lot of big things. And so I think starting from that sense first, it's like, what's the low level stuff that I can get off right now? Then replace yourself with what you're good at, and then you can kind of grow from there.
yeah. One of the other things I love to talk to you about and love to get on record is you have an amazing relationship with your wife, Jennifer. And she's been your ride or die since the very beginning. You've asked her to, some people might perceive take crazy risks, right? Jump out of the W-2, give this thing a
Yeah.
shot for a year. You know, just talk about how important it is to have that supportive spouse, partner. How do you stay on the same page? Because again, you're going 100 miles an hour, and how do you keep her on board? And talk about some of that.
Man, I've what's worked really well for me recently is not worrying about being right, which is kind of more in the personal thing than anything else. But it's like when I try to be right with Jen all the time, I typically it ends up even when I
Not
know
good.
that I'm right, it still doesn't work out the way that I thought it was going to work out. So now I just stop trying to be right. So that's just life advice, I guess. From a business standpoint, um, I think if you are like me, the visionary and the dreamer, right? And you're lucky enough to have somebody that's a partner or a spouse that is supportive, or even if they're not supportive, frankly. The most important thing that you guys can do at the beginning, the visionaries that are on this call or the dreamers that are on this call, is provide proof of concept. That's
Hmm.
the biggest thing. You cannot, and I used to be guilty of this where I would talk a really big game about, oh man, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And then there was never any follow through. And and follow through is one thing, but you actually need to produce a result, right? So it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to kind of take those actions, but perspective will change when you produce the result and you bring back and you show proof of concept. And that's, I think, the thing that hopefully will get the partner that's maybe a little bit more conservative or skeptical a little bit more on board and start to slowly build some momentum, is by showing that proof of concept. So for us, that's usually how do you get to your first deal as fast as possible? And that was what I was always good at, right? I got good at producing that result, then I got good at repeating that process over and over again, right? So then it was very easy when I came and I was like, look at this money in our bank account, you know what I'm saying? Or look at, we've got 3 or 4 rental properties now. It was a real thing. And so I think
Mm.
it's less talk, more action is really what you need at the beginning. And then hopefully at that point that they can get on board and then go from there. But open and honest communication, always, just, you've got to, if you're somebody like me that can get obsessive and really just like pour everything into the business, you've also got to find time to pour things into the marriage and into the family, because the partner or your co-pilot in this thing is probably not going to love real estate the way that you do. And you can't expect them to love it like you do. For a lot of times I was like, well, what, isn't this cool? Like all this stuff that we're doing. And I think she was like, yeah, it's cool, but she doesn't love it like how I love it. You know what I mean? And so you got to be okay with that. And you have to know and understand that, that the part, your spouse's job is not to necessarily be involved in the day-to-day business. For a very long time, I wanted Jennifer like working with me. And what I really wanted her was just to have a baseline understanding of like what's going on. So God forbid if something happened to me, like she was smart enough to know how to unwind everything and do anything. But I also, after working together with her, I was like, I don't know if I really want to work with you like day to day, right? Like I think I just needed you to know and understand like what our vision was, what our future was, have a sense of responsibility around those things. And I think that's evolved a lot for us too, dude. So this is a whole another, I mean, thing I could just go on and on about different things that
Well,
I've
yeah,
learned
the
over the
other
years.
the other thing I think that you do again, because when you're in this, you're the visionary, and we're just obsessive, as you've said. You can go seemingly a lot longer than seems reasonable. What you
Yeah.
do now is you take time once a quarter, once every 6 months to just unplug and frankly make it about Jennifer, right?
Yes.
You go
Correct.
travel, you do something. So just talk about how important that is to give them you, right? Not to be
Yep.
always on the
And
phone.
you've got to be intentional. One of the things that has been helpful for me, and I'm still trying to be better about this, but um, is really just being intentional about the things that that person loves and cares about that aren't real estate related. So like it's getting out in nature, hiking, doing those type of things. Jennifer is into all of that, right?
Yep,
And I am not, frankly, like I was never, I like it and I enjoy it now, but it wasn't like prior to doing all of this stuff, it wouldn't have been the first thing that I would have decided to do, right?
right.
And now I take joy in both the experience in doing it because it's like this is cool, it is a new experience and I've learned a lot, but I take a lot of joy in just having that time with her, seeing her happy in her element. And I know she does the same thing with me with real estate. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
when she sees me doing my thing, she knows that I'm there like living my life's work, right? And so we have to figure out like what that is for our spouse too and reciprocate the same way that we take our wives to the conferences and the travels and all of those things and we want them to be locked in when they express like, hey, here's the thing that's important to me. We have to reciprocate and show the same level of attention that they do when we want them to be into the real estate thing. And that, has also, I think, been beneficial for us.
Awesome. Awesome. We'll go to a question from Jim as we start to wind this down. We got 10 minutes
Yep.
left or so. Jason, do you have a Burr process you could share? I'm creating my own, but it's helpful to see what others are doing to tweak. What would you call your Burr
We've done
process?
lots of Burr, Jim. I mean, that's been how we built basically our entire long-term rental portfolio. All the assets that we've hold on, we've built off of a Burr thing. So the 30,000 foot view is, and you've heard me say this before, Jim, but I'm going to say it again just for everybody that's on there. You first need to build a business that generates consistent deal flow. That's, in my opinion, the prerequisite, right? So you need to have some type of something that's going on, whether it's relationships with agents and wholesalers, brokers, direct to seller marketing, or all of the above, where you have deals constantly coming in, right? So step one is that. Step two is, okay, we have this visual, like you visualize an assembly line. You have this assembly line built, and there's these deals that come across the assembly line at the beginning, like, the model was we're going to sell for every four houses that come, we're going to sell three or wholesale three or fix and flip three, and we're going to keep one. Because Burr, even though if you do it right and you're able to own the property without like having money tied into the property and it still cash flows, even with rates the way that they are now, you still need a steady like flow of inbound money coming in to offset all the things that are going to come up with doing that. So I don't personally believe that the right strategy is only Burr without some type of vehicle that's spitting off cash. Now, I'm all in on real estate, so I can spend all day building out the arm that generates the deals and the team that does this. For some of you guys, it's the W-2 is the thing that spits off the cash. For some of you, it's a contractor, a construction business. You just need something that spits cash off along with the thing where the assets are going to come in. Okay. So for every four deals that come in, three we're going to sell, one we're going to keep. The basic math that I would do, all right, in order to like make sure that this worked as a Burr was we needed to be able to buy, rehab, refinance all of the costs that are associated with doing a Burr, right? We needed to be all in on that project for less than 70% of what the ARV is, right? And ideally, we want to be lower than that because we want to have a little bit of cushion in case the appraisal comes in lower or whatever, right? A lot of the lenders right now, if you're going full leverage, like 75, some of them are doing 80%, you're going to pay for the cost of doing that. Your rate is going to be higher, the points, the fees, and all that stuff is going to be higher. So the higher leverage you go, the more expensive it gets. So the lower you can keep your basis into the property, the better cash flow that you're going to get, and the cheaper the lending is going to be on this thing, right? So I want to be all in for 70%. And the reason why I want to buy, rehab, rent, and refinance for less than 70% is so then that way I don't leave any money stuck in the property, right? And that's essentially it. And we have to make sure that we can cash flow. So per door, I'd like to see $200 to $300 in cash flow after everything. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, management, maintenance, expense, everything. You should have a couple $100, not just, PITI, account for everything, guys. Okay. And so if you can find that in this market, you're doing pretty damn good, dude. And so it's not, a lot of that is going to depend on, the average purchase price that you're at based on the market that you're in. Rates, obviously, rents are going to affect all of those things. But I like that simple math in order to make sure that the Burr works. And if it doesn't fit that model, then we just sell it. Because if we're all in at 75% or 80%, there's still an opportunity to make money there, guys. You know what I'm saying? And so, you just don't get emotionally attached to these things and then you move on. And then if it meets that mathematical criteria, is it in a neighborhood that I like? Is it in an area where I'm okay owning a property? Then you got to look at some of these other outside factors that, are going to determine whether it's there. But it's got to pass that sniff test for the math first, guys. And then we can look at, long term, do I see myself owning this for 10 years? And if not, that's okay. But this is going to be maybe of like a slower burn. And we've done that with some of our rentals where, we bought it, it just didn't make sense to own it for 5 or 10 years. And so we exited 2 or 3 years down the road. We got some appreciation, we got some other things. And so, that works really well too. You've done this, I know, Zuber, too, where you just kind of cycle through your portfolio sometimes and you thin the herd out a little bit. And, we do that every single year. We identify a few properties every single year where just, this doesn't make sense. We've got a lot of trapped equity here. The cash flow didn't work out the way that we thought it was going to. And, those things can be nice little pops of money. You own a house for 3 or 4 years, you bought it right. You got 2 to 3% appreciation. So then you get another maybe 15, 20, 25 grand in additional value when you turn around to sell. And then you exchange into something else, or you pull those chips off the table and just cash out. There's lots of different ways that you can go about doing that.
Love it. Jason, let's close on this question, this topic. Again, a lot of people come to real estate to get wealthy. There's also lots of people out there preaching doom, fear, and all of that. So I just want to ask you kind of point blank, is it still possible to get wealthy in real estate?
I think it's 100% possible. I think now is the best time to do it. I feel like, and here's why I say that. It's a couple different reasons. I think right now um, there's just a lot of friction in the market right now. And I'm big. And if you look at like the people that are the most successful in investing across the board, not just real estate, they're contrarian thinkers, guys. You know what I mean? Like the people, it's always do the opposite of what the masses are doing. And what are the masses? Let's just talk about real estate people in general. What are the
Mhm.
masses in the real estate people doing right now? They're complaining, they're sad, they're like, man, there's no money to be made right now. We can't do anything. You can't do it. But I know plenty of people that are thriving right now, guys. And so it's just like you I think right now, if you can cut your teeth in this business right now and you can carve out a little niche, it's only going to get easier, guys. It's only ever going to get easier,
Yes.
especially if you can find your bearings and get, a solid foundation under you right now. So I think we're setting up, I'll speak for me and my team. We're building right now for the long haul. I'm increasing my marketing. I'm stepping down on the gas in a strategic, not in a reckless way, but I'm looking at this season in our business as a time where we are going to gobble up market share. That's what I want to
Yep.
do. I want to gobble up some market share, so then when all of these fly by night people come out of the business, I've
Yep.
been able to grow and establish my footprint a little bit bigger. And then when there's a rush of foreclosure inventory, or whenever the other shoe drops, whatever that shoe is, we're going to be there and we're going to be ready. If you're trying to get ready after you've read in the headlines that everything's done, it's almost too late at that point, guys. You got to get ready right now. And so now's the time to really start cutting your teeth doing this stuff. And you've got to subscribe to the idea that if it's hard, that's good. It should be fucking hard, guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is, if it's hard for you, everybody else is literally on the verge of just saying, you know what, I'm going to go back and get a day job. So I
Yep.
actually like it when it gets harder, because I like when the barrier of entry starts to rise up. I like when people start tapping out,
Yep.
because for me, it makes me go harder, and I downshift and find another gear in those environments. So you really got to get your head screwed on straight right now. I'm not saying that it's an easy market to make money in, because it's not. But what I am saying is, if you do the work right now and you position yourself to know, how do I have a conversation with somebody that's going through notice of trustee sale? What are the mechanics of putting that deal together? Maybe I've done one or two of them. And then when more of that floodgate starts to open, it's going to be like you can get right into the run and then the sprint. But if you're just doing the baby steps, when the floodgate opens, you're going to get ran over. So you gotta start building that out now.
Folks, if you haven't paid attention to my daily financial news the last 3 days, I am calling it now. July and August are going to be the last hard months for real estate. We're going to start posting month over month gains in sales in September for lots of reasons. We're going to have sellers who need to sell finally understand and price right. We're going to have a lot of people fall away. We're going to have the Fed likely cutting in September.
Yep.
It's time to get right. It's time to do the work now. Again, don't believe the headlines. I've been telling you for quite a while, buyer's market, disrespectful offers, money's in the follow-up. Jason Pritchard is a living, breathing example of this. He is a top four investor in my mind across the country. Jason, thank you for being here. Thank you for all those extra goodies you're going to send over. I will add them to your classroom. You're the best, guys. Take care. Later.
Bye, guys.